Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coast Football Weekly. This week we're joined by Central Coast Football's Coaching Development Manager. Welcome to the pod, Pete Preston.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a chat.
Now, you're someone who's been involved on the Coast as a player and a coach for as long as I can remember. What does your current role entail?
Started off initially running some coaching courses for Central Coast Football, just to try and get upskill some coaches around the community clubs. And then, that slowly transitioned into some other things. We started running some JDP stuff, so junior development programs, and obviously currently working through the association championships that'll be played out in Mudgee in the July school holidays.
Speaking more on the association championships, it's a new initiative Football New South Wales has brought in. What can you tell us about that new competition and why it's so good for our local players?
I think it's the concept behind it was just born out of Football New South Wales making the decision to disband the Association Youth League, and the trade-off for that was obviously to organise a tournament for a couple of age groups, so association-based or community-based players, which is great, especially for our area, being such a strong football community, giving our club players an opportunity to represent the Central Coast out in Mudgee, so 13-year-old boys, 14-year-old boys, 14-year-old girls and 15-year-old girls. So just a great opportunity for the players and their families.
And what was the selection like behind selecting the coaches for these teams?
Some of the coaches, we just went through our database on coaching courses and put out an expression of interest, and we got plenty of interest from coaches. We had some some coaches on our that had been involved with us for a little bit, helping us run our JDP program. So we wanted to utilise them as much as we could, and then obviously we brought in some high-end coaches as well. Corey Atkinson from coaching first grade at Budgie, for example, Embel Jones in the girls space, who's been around the senior women's WPL space as well, which has been good. So, but we just wanted a diverse group of coaches from different clubs and bringing something a bit different to the players and stuff for the tournament.
Now, with this process of selecting the coaches, what were the main things you were looking for? Is it someone who's good at developing players or sort of had that experience with coaching sort of at a higher level?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture of both, but we sort of looked at, obviously, we had some criteria set from Football New South Wales where coaches had to be qualified in the first instance, so we couldn't just go and pick random coaches without any qualification. So, again, through my database that we had and contacts, we just reached out to a couple and through the expressions of interest, and then we received probably up to 20 expressions of interest, which was good. And then, through our knowledge of the coaches that we finally selected, and that we're pretty happy with the group that we picked.
And what was the trial selection process like? Did we have a lot of interest from players who wanted to come in and try out for these teams?
Yeah, absolutely. The players and the interest to support from the clubs, we just sent out some expressions of interest just to get an idea of numbers, so it helped us manage the trial night. We decided that we were going to do 2 trial nights, just open to obviously the age groups that we're taking away, and gave them the opportunity. And we also, to be fair, had some younger players come in as well who did quite well. So, in the 14 girls, for example, and the way our competitions are structured, we have got some 13-year-old and 14-year-old girls playing together. There's some 14-year-old girls and 15-year-old girls playing in the 15s team. So age wasn't a barrier. It was just a guide for us, really. But in the boys' space, primarily all the boys are 13s in the 13 squad and all the boys are 14 in the 14 squad and stuff. So we just had open trials for 2 weeks, just ran them through some different exercises, drills. Some people like to call them different things, but we just obviously pretty much put on a training session, just allowed the players to come in, feel comfortable in the, it's always nervous when you come in, just if it's only one night. So we we thought it was best to give the players an opportunity to do things over two nights and, give them the best opportunity. And we just, some 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v2s, expanded into some 6v6, 8v8s with goalkeepers. We brought in a specialised goalkeeper coach to work with the goalkeepers specifically to give them the best opportunity to be selected as well, rather than us just looking at who made the most saves on one particular night. The goalkeeper coach actually worked with the goalkeepers specifically on some different techniques that the goalkeepers will use. So, we're pretty confident that the process worked really well. And we've picked some very good players to represent us out there in Mudgee.
Yeah, and a lot of players from across the local clubs. I think 17 local clubs are being represented in under a month when we head out to Mudgee. How has training been for these players? Are they enjoying it?
Yeah, the feedback so far has been really good, and we did get obviously quite a diverse selection of players from different clubs, which is great. We didn't set out initially with a plan that we had to have so many players from each club. It wasn't about that at all. and some of the clubs have definitely got more players than others. And unfortunately, some clubs weren't represented at the trial, so we couldn't select them anyway. So, but we're more than happy with the players. The feedback from the parents and the players has been great. We had night one last Wednesday night. They received all their gear as well, which they were all chuffed about. So, they're all it's starting to feel real for them now, and they're getting really excited. So we've got a couple of games coming up in the next 2 weeks against CCU in the boys on Wednesday night, NSFA in the girls, and then next week we'll play against the Marins Academy, all 4 teams, and having one more training session after that, and then head out to Mudgee for the tournament.
Yeah, well, the kits haven't been released yet. I think they were getting released this week on social media, but Kel may have done an awesome job with decking us out for Mudgee, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the gear's tremendous. As I said, the players and the families, like the feedback that we've been getting about the kit's been great. So we're looking forward to getting that out on the socials and stuff, and then letting the kids wear it proudly out in Mudgee.
And what would a successful association championship look like for CCF? Are we going there to win? Is it more so about developing the players and also the coaches, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, because it's a little bit of an unknown. Like, we obviously know some of the associations that are going out there and stuff, and they're going to be quite strong. Hills are obviously a good area, NSFA, NWS. Some of the country regions are unknown, but they've got some Football New South Wales run some great development programs out there. So we're expecting them to be more than competitive as well. But from our point of view, we know our area is really strong. Just results at state cups and champion to champions year in, year out for Central Coast football. A lot of our teams do quite well in those tournaments. So, we're going out there with an expectation to compete, and I can tell you that the players definitely want to win it. They're all going out, all 4 age groups, with a plan to win it. But from our point of view, obviously a long-term goal is to, obviously, first and foremost, is to make the championships as positive an experience as possible for the kids and the families, and then obviously the feedback that will come back from Mudgee back to the Central Coast. We want it to be, people talking about it, and then hopefully we can grow it and expand, with more numbers at trials next year and moving forward and stuff like that. But we've got a little bit of a plan internally and stuff, but the players are definitely going out there to win it.
And when it comes to the tournament itself and the style of play, from top down throughout teams, is it going to be quite similar, or is each team and coach got to be able to put their own input on these teams?
Yeah, I've just said to our coaches, there's no set plan in systems or how we want to play and stuff. It's more around just getting the players on the field and letting the coaches have their own autonomy with their own teams and stuff like that. I think the game doesn't change. The principles are still there, and you got 2 goals, one to defending, one to scoring. So I think how the coaches will develop their own plans and how they want to play, and I think we'll get that with our 4 teams anyway, because we have such a diverse group of coaches, and I think that's the most exciting thing for me. So we just wanted to give the coaches as much autonomy as possible to allow the freedom for their players just to express themselves and represent Central Coast proudly.
Speaking more on the coaches in the coach education space here on the Central Coast, how far do you think it's come in the recent years since sort of your role with coaching courses?
From when I first started back in 23 to where we are now, like the amount of coaches that we've got through, whether it's on mini-roos, foundations, C licence, and obviously currently 2/3 of the way through our first B licence ever on the Central Coast. So, genuine interest from plenty of coaches out there in clubland. Obviously, we support CCMA and CCU as well, their coaches, and they don't have to travel to Sydney or Newcastle to do these courses. So we're in a really good space right now. The numbers fill up on courses consistently between 16 and 24 each time, which has been great. And, we're seeing a lot of coaches start at the bottom with foundational football and then go through to C licence, and then some of those coaches are now currently sitting on the current B diploma as well. So, I think we're ticking a lot of boxes at the moment, which has been great.
How important is it for these coaches not only to get this education for themselves, but for the players and our local players?
I think it's super important, because better coaches are definitely going to make better players, and the sessions are going to be more structured. We don't go through too much on you should play this system or you should play this. It's not about that. But it's some of the other messages that we're able to get out as well around, respect towards referees and how you manage game day and all that kind of stuff. So just some of the knowledge that we're able to give the coaches that come in on the courses, I think, is important, that they can take back to their club. And, if they go on and become a top end coach, or they're happy just being in their own community space, coaching the under-10s and stuff like that. We just feel like it's in pretty good hands at the moment. So, there's a lot of positives to come out of the courses, not actually just teaching coaches how to coach kids.
Well, you see it a lot. It's like the parent for maybe like an under 6 or under 7s. It's a parent who throws their hand up, says, "Oh, I'll take the team." For someone like them, like a volunteer in a sense, who doesn't have a starting base, what's the best place for them to start coaching with coaching courses?
On the mini roos, definitely. That'll give them just an inkling and stuff like that, because we actually give them a lot of stuff to take home as well, so they can have in their back pocket for when they need it. And then obviously if you want to step up a little bit into the older age groups in the foundation of football, and that's all you need. And they're quite cheap. The mini roos is a free course for coaches, and the foundations cost $100. So we think, and most clubs will reimburse that to their coaches anyway if they do the foundation. So you don't necessarily have to go into C license or B license, for example, and stuff to have enough knowledge to coach the under 5s or the under 10s. I had a really good example, 2 years ago, where a guy come in on the coaching course, and he was working at a club, and he's a dad, and he's a rugby union guy, had not much idea by his own admission on football, and he ended up having to coach his his son in the under 7s and his daughter in the under 9s, and they said just go on a coaching course with Pete, and he said he came on the course, and just able to see people like him being able to just part a little bit of knowledge back into the kids, so it looks like football and our game and stuff. And and then he ended up sending me a follow-up email as well, just thanking so much for the opportunity to come on the course. And it was a mini roos course, right? So it was at the bottom end of the scale, so to speak. And so those stories are the ones that resonate with you the most.
Yeah. So the response from our local coaches have been pretty positive.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah, we're just getting so many numbers through our mini roos courses each year, and we primarily target the mini roos courses at the start of the year after the clubs do all their team allocations and mum and dad putting their hand up and stuff like that, and then they come. So we're probably averaging over 100, 120, 150 coaches each year in the 3 years so far that I've been here. So, it's been really positive in that light.
Do you think coaches are more open to education now than what they were a few years ago?
I think so, as a rule, yeah. I still think we still have people that aren't interested, and that's okay. Like, it's not, as I said, they're not compulsory. On the Central Coast, there's no criteria that you have to have this certain level coached to coach at this level, which is fine. We've still got a lot of good football people in the game, and that have a lot of football knowledge and stuff. So, the coaching courses will just give them, give people a little bit of structure, and at the lower end, like I said, mini roos and foundations, it'll just give some mums and dads just an opportunity just to have a little bit of football knowledge passed on to them through the course, and then ongoing education that we can give them and support.
And you mentioned earlier we're currently going through our first B license here on Central Coast. How important was that, bringing that to the Plume Park?
Yeah, look, I think it's amazing. Like, again, we've got the best facility arguably in the country here at Plume Park. I know Football Australia and Football New South Wales staff love coming up here as well and giving us. So we're always going to be in the market to be able to get these courses, and just having the B licence course up here. Out of the 24 candidates that are on the course at the moment, I think 16 or 18 are from the Central Coast and working on the coast, which is great. So there's a couple that have come down from Newcastle, and a couple have come up from Sydney, and that's what a B licence is, because it does go national. But we did get some access first and foremost, and that for our local coaches to get first dibs on it as well. So it's been fantastic, and then hopefully. We can get an A licence coming up soon. We've got another B licence starting in November for 2026, going into 27, and then my goal I'd love to be able to get an A licence here in 2028. So that'd be again another coup for the area. And
B licence, that's about a year process, I believe.
It is a year process. So you do three-day blocks.
Yeah.
So we did block 1 3 days in November 25. Block 2 was in March this year, and then block 3. August coming up in August, and then obviously the candidates have to do a lot of stuff at home and stuff, and online. So they've got some modules to do. They have to do a journal, a coaching journal and stuff like that. So it does get quite. The process is quite intense for these, but it's starting to get more into the professional sort of pathway and NPL top end NPL space, and potentially moving into A-League opportunities as well. So. The thought process behind obviously making it more professional and doing more is obviously you're going to have to do that into that space. So, the coaches that go to that level are definitely looking to progress further.
Yeah. And now, someone who has been around football and coaching for a very long time, how do you think coaching has changed over the years?
Yeah, definitely seen a lot of it. As I said, when I first started coaching way back and I can remember doing my first coaching course, and I sort of got roped into it a little bit by Alan Burke and stuff. He was running a course here, doing the coach ed stuff on the coast, and he just needed a few candidates and stuff to come in and make up the numbers. So he asked me to come in and one or two other boys and stuff like that. And because the game hasn't changed, the actual principles have stayed the same from way back then. But I just think probably one of the biggest changes is just the continued change from the governing body. We had that period of time when we sort of tried to go to the Dutch model and all that kind of stuff.
Everyone played the same sort of,
Yeah, and again, there was a real push on the coaching courses back then as well. But the biggest thing I've seen now to the new sort of model, there's no real emphasis around you must play 4-3-3 or you must play 4-4-2 or 5. Coaches
more freedom.
There's more freedom to play different ways and stuff, depending on what, obviously, for the coach to work out what kind of play, what sort of players he's got at his disposal or her disposal. But just a real focus on the principles and techniques of the game and stuff like that. And I think that's it. So football's always going to be football. And I see that as the biggest change, where there hasn't been as much emphasis on actual systems and stuff, which has probably been a big positive.
Do you think there's been more of a focus or a shift to developing players rather than just winning, or was it always, through your experience, mainly about development?
I think for me personally, it's a lot of it's been about development, but I definitely do see coaches out there that still, their clear focus is to win, and their whole mentality around winning and losing governs how they think their team performed. Where I still think you can play well and lose, you can play well and win, you can play poorly and lose, and you can play poorly and win. So I think the biggest thing we talk about on coaching courses, and one of the biggest things, is about reflection, and that's the biggest message that I try to get into the coaches' minds as well, is reflect and see what your players do well. There's always areas of improvement regardless of the result. So the result will tell part of the story. There's definitely more emphasis at the top end, and there has to be, because it's all performance phase and results driven. Absolutely it is, because coaches will live and die by their result. If you're coaching, local first grade team, for example, men's or women's, or you're coaching in the A-League, and it doesn't even really matter what the sport is, but the higher you go, absolutely. The Socceroos have started their campaign. The team will get judged on their results. That's the reality. But when you're working with younger players and stuff like that, I think the result will tell part of the story, but it doesn't always tell the whole story. And I think if coaches can start to understand that, and obviously parents and players as well, but the messages that they're given by the coaches is where it all starts, right? So if we can get those messages out and get them a lot clearer through the coaching courses as well. And, with the coaching courses and stuff, it's more, even though it's been Football Australia run the whole journey, it hasn't sort of been. It's been left to their own device a little bit, where they're actually, Football Australia has a lot more control over it now. So a mini Ruse course or a foundations course or a C diploma or a B diploma that we run here on the Central Coast, it'll be the very similar criteria in that course that they're doing in Western Australia, Victoria, Queensland, Tasmania. And I guess there's a lot more consistencies now. The coach education tutors, which is my role at CET, we meet every month, 6 weeks around the country on a Zoom call, discussing what's working, what's not working, how we can improve to give Football Australia, and obviously the state member feds as well, Football New South Wales, Vic, Western Australia, all that, some feedback as well in regards to how we can help expand. And I think, from that point of view, it's getting a lot more continuity, which has been good as well.
Is there a certain question you might get the most from parents or volunteers that are just starting that seems pretty simple to someone who's been around the game, but something that they might not understand?
Yeah, absolutely. How we deal with parents.
Yeah.
Primarily it's, I know some coaches will go out and straight away and have, no dealings with the parents, and other coaches will probably try and have too much and let them too much in. But at the end of the day, with the players, the parents are the big stakeholders, aren't they? Because they've got to bring them to training. They've got to bring them to the games, and they're responsible as much as the coach for the player development. So I always say to the coaches that I deal with on my courses is that you've got to find a way to embrace the parents, and hopefully then they'll give a little bit more back as well to parents, and not stress too much about, again, the result, because parents just look at the result and primarily, and then if a team loses 1-0, 3-0, 5-0, or they win 1-0, 3-0, 5-0, then again that governs how good or bad the coach is, right? And stuff. And it's not always the way.
Well, it's even funny. You talk about obviously the Socceroos getting the win yesterday. The way they set up, the way they played, I thought it was great. But if they play the same way when that's set up and lose 2-0, 3-0, you're probably looking at the coach going, well, why are they playing that way? Yet they get the result and he looks like a genius, right? So it's just so interesting how the results do play a factor in that.
Absolutely. And you look at, he obviously, based on the Socceroos yesterday, and he's left Matty Ryan out. He's left Jackson Irvine out, was two of his probably most experienced players. Yeah. He's gone with a more youthful team. I think Harry Sutar was the only player that's played in a World Cup before. All the other 10 players were debutants, which is great. And, you could see the energy in their group. But, yeah, if Popper loses or the Socceroos lose, Popper's probably under the pump in the media and how he manages that. But they're the 1-2-0. So, he's a national hero at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. Dropping your captain, Matt Ryan. I mean, I went on Twitter when that come out and everyone's going, what is he thinking? 90 minutes later, they're going, oh, my God, he's a genius. Yeah. So it's just funny how that works.
Swings and roundabouts and stuff like that. And as I said, I think, like we said earlier, it's just, if at the top end, absolutely results are important. And, I'm sure Popper knows that more than anyone from his background as a player and a coach. And it should look slightly different to what the Socceroos are doing in America right now to what the under-10s do at a local ground and that on a Saturday morning and stuff like that. But I think, like I said, the parents are, they're a big piece of the stakeholder industry and stuff like that. And we have to, in my opinion, embrace that the right way though.
And now we've spoken a lot about coach education. Let's take it all the way back. I know you've been around the game for a very long time, but where exactly did football start for you?
I sort of just fell into it. I was obviously like most young players and stuff like that, had a few friends at school that played. I actually didn't start playing until I was 7. And I was going to school and one of my mates asked me if I wanted to play and I went home and asked my mum and dad if that was okay and sort of, started there and in the under-7s in southwest Sydney.
Yep.
And then slowly played 3 years at community football and then obviously had the opportunity to move into representative football at Macarthur. So I played in the old Metropolitan League and 11s and 12s, so played in that for 2 years and then transitioned into youth league at Macarthur as well. And so played 13s to 16s. I actually had the my under-18s year off for family things and stuff, which was fine. And then when I got my licence, I was old enough to go back and take myself there and sort of worked out quite well. And I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity in the senior team at a young age when I was 17 and scored on my debut. So that sort of, you talk about right place, right time, come off the bench, scored the winner, and then you sort of look back, but it could have been quite the other way as well and stuff like that. So you just got to be ready to go, ready to take your opportunity. And that's probably been my biggest message as a coach to players that I've coached as well and stuff like that. So, just moved through, fortunate enough to move into the senior team there, played there for about up until I was about 24.
Yep.
And then made a move to Wollongong to play and played down there for 2 years in the Sydney NPL still. But played for Wollongong. And then 1996, I moved up the Central Coast.
Going back to that debut, were you expecting to get on the pitch at that time, or you just thought you were just sitting on the bench to make up numbers? Did you think you were playing that day?
No, we actually, because I was in the under-19 squad back then. It was under-19s in first grade, and there'd been a bit of weather around, and we got to the game for the under-19s game, and the club said that the youth team's been called off, but they're playing first grade only, which is what happens a lot.
Yep.
And typical us 18-year-old boys and stuff like that, all had the shits, and because we weren't getting a game. And then the first grade coach came and gave me the tap and said, "You're on the bench."
Yep.
And I thought he was joking because it was only my second game back at the club in senior football.
Right.
And then the game was going along, and it's quite early in the game. I think it was like 10 or 15 minutes into the game. One of the centre backs got injured, and I was an attacking player. So everyone's looking at the defensive cover. And then for some strange reason, the coach made a decision to put me on and made a couple of adjustments with the field and with the team. And one of the older boys went back to centre back, and then I went up front and scored the winner, and then got hooked.
All right. What was the goal like?
They're always good, aren't they? But it was probably just a nice strike from the edge of the box, about 20 yards. You'd sort of never forget your first one.
Yeah.
And I did get many, so I can remember a lot of them. But in all fairness, no, it was a decent goal, and we still talk about it now when we catch up with those old boys and stuff. So more luck than good fortune, I think. And, right place, right time. Why did he put me on over a defender? All that
Just
stuff.
Even the injury itself.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, I might not have got a game. I might have got on with 5 minutes to go and the game might have been done and dusted. Who knows? But I guess things happen for a reason.
Yeah,
and
got your opportunity. Took it.
Absolutely. So, it was pretty exciting.
Were you nervous at all, or did it sort of happen so quickly with the injury, not expecting to go on because you're a defensive player? And
I was definitely nervous. I was just not expecting that so early. As I said, I was just turned 17 and stuff, so I was like not really, I didn't think I'd play senior football that year and stuff like that. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was ready. So you sort of have all the doubts and stuff. But yeah, to be fair, the coach believed in me, which was good. So it's something that I've always taken into my coaching journeys, just having that belief and faith in players. But and then just being open and clear with them in your instructions, and hopefully it sort of worked for me. And so the coach just gave me so much confidence to go on and perform. So.
And how did that move to the coast come about?
Living in Sydney at the time, I was playing in Wollongong, but I was travelling down, and I was living with my brother, and we sort of had to move out of the house we were living in and stuff, and I didn't really have anywhere to go, and my mum had a unit up here in Womble. She was just renting because she was working in Sydney, and so I just sort of came up there. The plan was to come up for a couple of months and head back to Sydney, and just get back on my feet, and never went back.
No, it's stayed ever since.
Stayed on the coast ever since,
What do you remember from your first year at the coast? Is a pretty good team.
Very good team. Yeah, I was pretty fortunate. We played with some very good players. Alan Burt was a coach, and he just sort of come in, got the job. I come in, and I knew, to be fair, I knew a lot of the players because I'd played against them over the years and stuff like that. But we had like Damien Brown, Andrew Clark, who went on, obviously played A-League and stuff like that, and Clarkie's doing his thing in the S&C stuff now. Mark Drysdale, Craig Thompson, Ben Lovey, Shane Knight, who's a current board member. It was just a really, really strong team. We did really well. We performed really well in that first season I came up. And then we did have a big turnover of players. A lot of players moved to Sydney or went into the National League. And then we ended up with a very youthful team.
Right.
And to be fair, I stayed on, and I was happy to support that journey and for the younger players coming through, which was great. So,
What coasties were the next sort of bunch through?
People like Brent Demery, Mick Coates, Stewie Sontag, Nick Agastefanis. It's just a lot of boys that are around now. You sort of still see around and stuff
still
like that.
floating around local clubs
so
and
that
whatnot.
back end of the 90s, early 2000s. And, we had a couple of players from Sydney as well that came up, and we used to always get, we're a good attraction place because we're playing in NPL in Sydney in the top division. We used to get a lot of players from Newcastle come down as well, and so we had quite a diverse team. Some people argue that it was the right decision. Some will say no, but that's okay. Everyone's has their own opinions on all that kind of stuff. But, to be fair, all those boys fitted in really well culturally, which was probably the first and foremost, because there's a really, as most people know on the coast, there's a really good football culture on the coast and stuff like that. So I think that's something that you've really got to buy into when you come here, and when, those players in particular, we didn't have too many issues around those boys fitting in.
And when you finished up a rep system, obviously you went and played local, but being from Sydney, you didn't have any ties to any local clubs. So what made you go to Killarney? Yeah,
it's a funny one. When I first made the decision to go to Killarney, I was actually, because my wife is Andrew Ollier's niece and stuff like that, and Ollie was coaching at the entrance at the time. So we sort of had a few conversations about potentially going to the entrance to play. And my son's godfather was the coach of Killarney at the time, Bob Dalcol, and he just asked me first primarily. And when it sort of all came about that we could go back and play in the local competition and stuff like that. So that's sort of how I landed at Killarney, and then had a couple of good years there as a player in the NPL, or Div 1 first, got promoted NPL. Then sort of ended up on the committee, and been part of the furniture ever since there. So, but it could have been quite different. Could have been up the town to the biggest rival. So
What was the Premier League scene like back in those days when you first joined the competition?
Good quality. Your minor, back then, Frenchie, Chappell, Staff, like some of these players and stuff like. They were probably the benchmark there, and then Arimba as well. Arimba had a really good side. Wayne Pagden, Ryan Marshall, Hubbo, Dave Mulby, just to name a few, Phil Cartner, boys that are still running around now in 35s and 45s. But they were probably the two benchmark sides when I first came in. Southern were actually quite strong as well back then. And Killarney was known as a bit of a yo-yo club.
Yeah.
And definitely
At
early
that
on
time.
and stuff like that, up and down. They'd do really well with some players. The players would leave or whatever reason. And, we'd sort of, not necessarily when I was playing, but up until that point. And then we sort of tried to change the culture a little bit. And then the way we went about it. And then we had, we obviously Gary Meyer came back as well. So obviously you had a, top-end goalkeeper, Martin Dreen, was coaching with us for a period of time. He came up and had a year or two with us. Mark Moffat, myself, Burnty came back as well. And then you throw in the local juniors like Jared Reid, Jamie Marr, Brent Rogers, Ian Rogers, Wayne Beard, like some of those, that you'd look at that cycle for us. And then we slowly started to evolve. Teams started to go from strength to strength in the club, to be fair as well. And there was a big, one thing I'll say about Killarney, when I first got involved as well, there was a real disconnect between the juniors and the seniors, which was sometimes it can be a positive, but sometimes it can be a negative. So we tried to sort of bridge that gap a little bit as well. And I think we had a bit of success doing that, to be fair.
And when you look back at Killarney then and now, are there many major differences?
No, not really.
No.
Not really. I think, we sort of probably because we've had such a consistent, we have had a lot of change, a number of changes in our committee and personnel, whether it's players, coaches, all that, the normal stuff. But, we've had a lot of consistency there as well. I've been there like 25 years now.
Yeah.
And there's been a few other people there. Matty Gale, our president now, has been there for over, I think, 12 or 14, 15 years maybe as well. So, through that period and, we put a lot of, when I first got involved, we tried to put a lot of things in place in how we operate, what we're looking for. Yes, we want our junior teams to be successful as well and represent the club proudly, but, with the end goal, obviously men's and women's, boys and girls looking to get into, men's and women's Premier League and stuff like that. So, we think we've done quite well in that space.
Now, as a player, I think you did have, was it just 1 year at Budgie?
I did have 1 year at Budgie, 2008.
What was the reason behind that?
Yeah, the Budgie thing was a funny one. I was sort of just, because I come out of, I actually went back and had 2 later years at Central Coast. I went back into the state leagues and stuff, played under Ole and Johnny McClafferty, 2006, 2007. And people probably a bit disappointed with me and Killarney because I was still involved in the club at Killarney. And then, H just reached out. H was coaching and he just reached out and said, would you be interested in coming up and playing, trying to get back into, they just got back into NPL, on the Central Coast. And he wanted, obviously, to try and, build the side up and stuff like that. So, we made a decision, had a chat with him. It was like, it's a big call, obviously, with my ties to Killarney, but we sort of made it work. And, to be fair, I wouldn't change it. I had a, I know it upset a few people and stuff like that around Killarney and that, but, sometimes you make decisions for yourself as well. And, I've always put others first a lot of my career and as a player or, my coaching and stuff like that. And it was probably one of the few times that I actually put myself first and, wanted to finish on a high in NPL. Killarney were in Div 1 at the time. And yes, I could have went back and helped them get promoted again and stuff potentially. But I made a decision. I was 37, I think, or 38 at the time and one last hurrah sort of thing. And to be fair, we had a really good year. I met some lifelong friends now as well that I play with up at Budgie, which is great. We won the comp by 15 points and then got nutted in straight sets on pens in both semis. So we missed out on the granny. And I think your minor ended up winning that year as well. They beat the entrance in the grand final. So
good year looking back. Absolutely,
mate. As I said, good memories, and I wouldn't change it for anything.
And when did your coaching journey start?
About the same time. Finished up playing for the Central Coast, and Mark Boyd was the sort of head of football, technical director here at. It was called Lightning then.
Yep.
And I was finishing up playing, and sort of he just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Would you be interested in getting involved in some coaching? You've got a lot of a good skill set that we think you could be, and we'll help you develop. We'll help develop you." So I started with the under 12s. I agreed, and I started with the under 12s. I sort of took over them probably just before the halfway point of the season. They had a coach move on, and they were looking for someone to fill that role, and so I jumped in there, sort of all guns blazing. Had players like Cameron Wilkinson, Alex Arbello, Jack Reagan. So a lot of boys that obviously well, but boys that are floating around playing locally now as well, which is good. Daniel Moffat was another one. Dylan Holtz.
So, quite a few good players.
A real strong team and stuff, and playing in the Metro League and stuff. And we were super competitive. Had a really good team. I'm not sure I was a very good coach, I'll be honest, but I was learning. It was my first year. I'd sort of only just done a senior license, so I was sort of understanding some structure around coaching as well. But but yeah, really enjoyable time. Still friends with a lot of the kids now and the families. Continued on into 13s with a very similar. A lot of those boys come back into 13s, and we won the league and got beat in the grand final. So we had a really strong year that year in the 13s. And then, again, just fortunate that was going in at the end of 2008 season, and then Mark Boyd tapped me on the shoulder and said, "We want to give you the first grade job." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So again, ended up getting the first grade role in 2009 season. So it was a bit of a, it was a steep learning curve. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think I was ready, but I don't think you ever are. So, I say to coaches and potential coaches, prospective coaches, if you get an opportunity, sometimes it's best to say yes and then sort of learn on the fly sort of thing and stuff like that, because you don't know when the next opportunity is going to come. So I jumped in, as I said, got good support from Mark Boyd. Dan Barrett was here as well at the time, doing some stuff with CCF. I was able to lean on some contacts that I had. John McClafferty was really good support back then, and some other coaches as well, and different things. So I was able to lean on some of that. So I actually did that for 3 years. So it was good. 2000 up to 2000. So 2009, 10, 11, which was really
doing
good.
First grade.
Yeah.
Following playing, was coaching something you thought you'd always get into?
To be honest, I always felt that I would stay involved in some capacity, because the biggest thing about coaching was just being in the change room, like with the boys that continue. I know it's a different role, and one thing that I sort of hang my hat on is that I try to give the players their freedom as well. And I'm not one of the players, but I still like being around the change room and being on the grass with the players and coaching and stuff. So the coaching thing was probably just a natural progression for me, definitely.
And stepping into first grade with not much experience, like you said, how did you find that?
Challenging for sure. I think the biggest thing for me was, and I know nothing's perfect, but even as a player, I expected perfection from myself. So when I first got into coaching, especially in the seniors and stuff like that, I think I was expecting all the players to be perfect as well and stuff like that. So it sort of built up a lot of frustration, especially probably for the first year and a half. And then, I think I slowly started to relax a little bit and understand that, had to have some processes in place rather than just going out there and expecting things to happen. And I feel as though, over time, and experience is obviously a great leveler. There's no doubt about that. But definitely in the early years and stuff like that, I think I just expected too much from the players. And just what I expected of myself as a player, so I expected the same of them. So, it was a big learning curve, that one for sure.
And then following Lightning, the Mariners took over that, turned into the Mariners Academy, and then you also had first grade there, I believe?
2013, 2014, I was assistant coach. So 2013 with Mark Jones, which obviously was an unbelievable experience, because Jones was just come out of the A-League with the Jets and stuff. So just learnt so much then. Good things, bad things, absolutely, positives and negatives. Then 2014, I worked with Jason Van Blerk. So Blerky came up the coast, and he got the job, and worked with him. And again, 2013 was a funny year. We sort of had a really good team, but we just couldn't get results. And then 2014, we still had a good side. We went a bit younger, and we got results. It was funny and stuff like that. And then so it was again, good times, good learnings from me. What worked for the coaches, what didn't work for the coaches. Hopefully, take a few learnings from me moving forward. And then 2015, got the first grade job and stuff, which was great. So I had some, fortunate enough, we made a decision to go very young and based around in the academy space, and we had a really really strong year. I think we ended up running. I think we led the comp with spirit for probably majority of the year, and then we ended up just fading late. We lost a couple of players to the A-League squad and sort of impacted the back end of our season and stuff, but we sort of fell into the finals and unfortunately got knocked out in week one.
I remember being in the academy throughout that stage, especially when Jonesy was coach. I remember watching a few of those games, and he was quite a character from what I can remember. Was it like that, being a part of that coaching squad?
Yeah, absolutely. He was, as I said, just from football knowledge, unbelievable, but just as a bloke, funny and lots of stories and lots of different things going on in his life and his mind and stuff like that, and just watching how he worked but what a tremendous asset at that time for the coast and some of those young players, and that got to work under him, and obviously for the coaches as well, myself, Hayden, Burnty, and that were the assistants and under 20s coaches, and what a time to be alive on the coast. It was really good.
2013, 2015, you did coach quite a few good players who have gone on with their careers, Buhaja, Walesy, Bingham, just to name a few. What was it like seeing them progress?
Yeah, it was good. Lockie and Trent were obviously local boys as well, which was always nice, and sort of had a fair bit to do with their journey and watching them play in juniors and stuff, especially when I first got into coaching. And then, yeah, obviously Jake McGing, Josh Bingham, just to name a couple. You know, Josh moved up from Wollongong, Jake moved up from Sydney, and you know, just watching them come through into the 23s with the academy and the first team, it was they were just, you know, you could just tell that they just had a little bit more about them.
Yep.
And they were going to get some opportunities. And then, you know, obviously Lockie and Trent as well, both went on to represent the country as well at youth level. And yeah, they both did really well. So yeah, set the scene for a good little sustained period in the Mariners development system.
Yeah, well, I think Trent was only 16s when he got the call up to first grade, because I was playing in that 16s team, and you sort of knew like he was destined for bigger things, just his speed alone and just how well he'd do. So yeah, he'd really got an opportunity, took it. And I remember also playing against Lockie Wales, he was the year above, and you always knew those sort of players were going to go on to bigger things. Are there any players that come to mind where you think they should have done better with not better with their career, but should have moved on to better things? Maybe injuries or something played a part in that.
Yeah, I think there's always those players. Like, you know, one big one that comes to mind, like we were talking earlier and that off screen, and you know, Daniel McFarlane was definitely one that had a lot of talent. You know, again, broke into the first team under Jonesy early.
Yep.
You know, I remember him scoring a couple of goals and, you know, really set in the league a lot as well. And his name was sort of, you know, getting talked about a lot. And yeah, so he was probably one big one that you sort of look back on and go, yeah, maybe a bit unlucky. And, you know, there's plenty of others that sort of were so close in that time, in that group. And you look at, you know, Trent was a funny one because Trent was really, really fast. But what people didn't really know probably a little bit about, he had a little bit of nastiness about him as well. Like he, you know, going into things and, you know, leaving things in there, you know, like people say it's a striker's tackle and stuff like that. But I think Trent knew what he was doing all along and stuff like that. So, you know,
he was very quiet.
Yeah, he definitely left his mark on a few centre backs' legs and stuff like that, which at different times. And, you know, through that he was able to, you know, he used to get a few yellow cards and that, to be fair. Lockie was slightly different. Lockie was probably a more technically gifted player and stuff like that, and probably early doors didn't like the hard stuff too much and that, but to his credit, over the years and of experience playing at the highest level and stuff, he's definitely developed that part of his game as well. And
then following 2015, you moved to a technical director role for 4 years or so?
Yeah, up until 2020. So coaching various junior teams, I think under 16s, under 18s, but leading the program 13s to 18s. There was a big change around with the A-League. Tony Wormsley had come in at that stage at the start, and John Hutchison. And, you know, they made a decision and along with Ken Shembry, to bring in Ben Kahn down from Queensland. So yeah, Benny come in as a 23s coach. And yeah, so I got the opportunity to be the TD, the lead of the program in the youth and stuff like that. So yeah, again, a different role, more around development, obviously trying to get players into the senior academy team, the 23s. That was our first sort of aim, to get players into that space and then hopefully long-term get them into the A-League program. And, you know, obviously we're fortunate enough over the years to be able to get a number of those players through, which has been great.
Likes of Harry Steele, Nisbet, I'm sure there's quite a few more. How was it seeing them as a coach again, just to see them to go and achieve what they did, especially with the Mariners?
It probably gives me the greatest joy now. Like, you look back at your playing career versus your coaching career, and, you know, when you're a player, you just look after yourself and you want the best for yourself, and you give yourself every opportunity to maybe go on and, you know, see how high you can go and how far you can push. But as a coach, you sort of, you know, you're responsible for 16 players if you're coaching one team. As a TD, you're responsible for, you know, anywhere from 75 to 80 players each year. So yeah, having players like Harry Steele, you know, Jacob Farrell, obviously, you know, those two boys come through the academy from 9, you know, did the SAP, come through into the youth with us, moved on into the senior academy space, and then, yeah, onto bigger and better things with the A-League. And then obviously Jakey, you know, overseas now, and, you know, lots of, you know, national team call-ups at youth level, underages. Nizzy was a good one. You know, Nizzy came down with Ben Kahn, to be fair, from Queensland when he was about 18. Dan Hall's another one. You know, Benny brought a few boys down from Queensland, and yeah, Nizzy and Dan were probably the pick of the bunch that actually went on and made a career for themselves. And, you know, Niz is playing in Europe at the moment. He's had a couple of Socceroo caps. Dan Hall's, you know, obviously arguably, you know, stats-wise, you know, he's won championships at the Mariners. He's won championships at Auckland now, doing really well. And, you know, humble, humility, all that, all those words that you talk about with players, like they just got it in abundance and stuff, and then, even some of the other players that, we identified Maxi Ballard at a schoolboys tournament, for example, and maybe not many people know that, but, we identified him there and we brought him up to the Mariners and, again, he was, just looking at him, and not many people knew about Maxi because his parents were working abroad and he was with them, and then they came back to Sydney and he sort of just landed at Harkoa in the under-18s, and then we brought him up to the Mariners, and the rest is history for him as well. Socceroos, scored on debut, I think it was.
Yep.
Playing in Holland now as well, and again, not just a ripping footballer, but a ripping bloke as well. So you see those stories, and just to be part of a little piece of their journey, and unbelievable.
I mean, you sort of touched on it, but for you, that's the most rewarding part, seeing these players sort of progress and go further with their careers.
Absolutely, because your time's over as a player and stuff. And, I was fortunate enough to play NPL in Sydney, the top NPL in Sydney, and, for, probably a dozen years, and really enjoyable, and, still got lifelong friends here now and, in the game because of that, but wasn't quite good enough to go to the top level. So to get involved in coaching and then be part of that and those kids' journeys and watching them, progress into, like I said, into A-League and then into Europe, and then, obviously national team selection as well. Like, it's just, you watch them play, it just gives us, brings a smile to your face.
When you first started coaching, did you ever think it would lead to this?
At no chance. No. At no chance. You sort of hope and you go, I wonder what it's like to coach those players, because I know a lot of people, and over the years I've built up a lot of friendships and stuff like that with coaches that are coaching national teams and A-League teams and different things like that, and you think, I wonder what it'd be like to, to coach at that level and stuff like that, and, probably never get the opportunity to find out, but, just to be part of the, of a player's journey into youth football and stuff like that, and then when you see them, they come up and they shake your hand and they talk to you as if, like it was when you were talking to them in the under-13s and stuff like that. Yeah, it's unbelievable, Jacob Farrell's a good example. I was talking to him. He was back in the country 2 years ago, and that when he was injured, unfortunately, and that from when he was at Portsmouth, and just chatting to him out here on one of the finals days and stuff like that, and all he wanted to do was talk about the under-18s grand final that we won and stuff. So he's like, I'm talking about you're playing for your country, you're playing for this and stuff like that. But he was just so humble, and it wasn't about him, it was about us and stuff like that. So, just, again, a terrific young guy, and, so happy for those kids to do what they're doing and see what they're doing and hopefully continue to do what they do. Yeah,
it's funny, like, no matter the heights they reach, they probably look back at the Mariners Academy as some of their favourite years, just probably the culture and the boys that they had. It just means so much to them to come out here and talk to you and relive it.
Absolutely does, mate. Yeah, and like I said, they're just genuine in their conversations as well, which is good, right? So, and we, one of our, a few of our things that we talked about in the academy space all the way through for all our players was humility, integrity, some of those things that you want them to take away and give them some life skills, not just teach them how to kick a ball or how to pass a ball or how to score, how to defend, all the stuff we do in football, and that. But we wanted to give them some tools to take away off the field as well. And I think we did a pretty good job in my time. So,
how important do you think it is that a player is sort of have that level-headed, sort of got their head screwed on off the pitch in terms of making it further?
I think it's super important, because you don't want to get known as a rogue or a bit of a goose. And it's not about everyone liking you, not at all, and stuff like that, because you still have to have certain stuff about you to be able to go and play at that level. But you want to be respected and known as a good person. And I think, looking at different sports and stuff like that, I think some of the AFL does quite well. A lot of their players seem level-headed and stuff across the board. And I think football is the same. Definitely. I think, you don't see, even since the inception of the A-League, go back prior to the old National League and stuff like that. Like, there was never a lot of stories about the top players getting into trouble and anything like that. So I think, and you see them down the shop or you see them somewhere, and even my time doing some coaching courses when I did my A and my B license and stuff, and not naming names, but like we had ex-Socceroos and boys that played in Europe their whole career and on the courses and stuff like that, and you're sitting on a course on an A diploma or a B diploma with them, and at the end of the day, you might go down and have a beer or a coffee or something like that, and they talk to you just like we're having this chat now. So
super approachable,
absolutely, and happy to share. The biggest happy to share, and their experiences, and again, I say to just everything's an experience, and you get an opportunity to to park a lot of stuff in your back pocket and just bring things out when you need them and stuff. And the only way you can do that is by networking and sharing stories and about your football as a player, and then in your coaching journey and stuff like that. I just think, yeah, I think the more coaches can do that and experience that, I think, because it's been a big part of my journey. So that's probably one of the biggest things I can pass on.
When it comes to coaching, you probably work with some great coaches who are also great players, but does it take to be a great player to be a great coach?
Not necessarily, because it's a different skill set. As a player, you're responsible solely for yourself and stuff like that. You want to be in the starting 11 every week. You want to be the best player you can be. As a coach, if you're coaching one team, I said you're responsible for 16 players. You start to get into a professional environment, maybe 20, 23, a bigger squad, how to manage that, how to look after the players more that aren't playing. But it's easy to look after the players that are playing. There's no doubt about that in any squad. But the ones that don't play, that's the tricky bit and stuff like that. Then you start talking player management and how you manage those players and how you keep them engaged at training and game days when they're not playing or they're not part of the 11 or the 16, the match day squads. That can be quite tricky. You tell a player that he's playing in the youth team, for example, doesn't always go down well, especially an experienced player. So the skill set doesn't necessarily, just because you've been a good player, doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a good coach, because if you can't manage that side of it, you'll get yourself stuck a little bit. And I think the majority of that stuff just comes from experience. It's trial and error, learn, I did this time. Your own experiences when you got dropped as a player, because we've probably all been dropped at different times. And how did the coach approach you when he was putting you back in the youth team or putting you to the bench or not playing you at all? Do you get it right all the time? Absolutely not. You're continually learning. And it's tough sometimes, right? And the hardest thing for a coach, especially a head coach, is to tell someone they're not playing. And whether you're going to be on the bench or you're not in the match day squad or you're playing in the youth team, that's the hardest conversation you'll have in coaching as a rule and stuff like that. But like I said, you're starting 11's easy, right? Because everyone's happy because they're in the 11. So
that's right.
They're kicking the ball and they're doing things.
They're getting the game time they want.
Absolutely. So I think definitely not the same skill set, but there is some learnings there. The biggest thing about if you played at a good level, you've probably got a bigger network in the game. So and people know who you are, so you've probably got an opportunity to, at least in the first instance, get a conversation and get in a room with someone or get on the phone if you wanted
Being able to track players.
If you don't have that sort of recognition, then sometimes that can be a little bit more challenging. Not impossible, but challenging for sure.
Now, moving on, we took to social media to let our followers know you're coming on. First question, I think I've heard this before, the story. Obviously, a lot of people know you by Shirls. We got asked, where does that nickname come from?
A long time ago. So going back to the year I made my debut and scored on debut. So that year, I'd come out of junior football and not many people knew who I was at the time, even though I was in the same sort of club, and there was a bit of a disconnect with the juniors and seniors there as well. And I got the opportunity to come into the senior football, and I used to have long hair.
Long time ago.
So I used to have long hair and curls, and the coach thought I played like a girl, so he used to call me Shirl the girl. And then some people thought that was my name, Shirl.
Right.
And stuff, not Pete.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So it just stuck, and I've had it since I was 17. True story. Yeah.
I heard a different story that there was like a TV character named Shirley, or I never knew that was the actual story. That's interesting.
That coach, Ray Bowles, his name was, good guy, and used to call me Shirl the girl. He said I was too soft,
and it's stuck ever since.
It's stuck ever since.
Even when you moved to the coast, it's still
because everyone knew me as Shirl. Like Ollie and Dale and all those guys, like all those older guys and stuff. That Lily,
who you played against,
and stuff like that. They knew my name, but they just knew me as Shirl as well. So it was like every time I got greeted and stuff like I was Shirl. So I actually get. When people call me Pete now, it's sort of like I've got to look twice and make sure they're not talking, because my dad's name's Pete as well. My father.
Okay.
And it's like, it's me.
Next question. What's the biggest challenge in developing coaches? Is it the expense or the time commitment?
It's a bit of both. There's no doubt. But to be fair to Football Australia, the costs have reduced in regards to actual coaching courses. But the biggest challenge with the finance side of the game that I've found over the years is that generally the clubs don't want to pay for coach education. They just expect coaches to go out and get themselves qualified and then come to the club to try and get a coaching gig. I guess the biggest challenge is finding out firstly whether you want to coach. Do you want to spend the money to find out if you want to coach? Because you won't get a job if you don't have a license, for example. Like even now with all the benchmarking that's going on around NPL space in around the country and all the different federations and stuff like that. You can't get a job if you don't have a minimum of C diploma, right? So it's challenging, but to go to a C diploma, it's time and it's money. The biggest challenge is if you don't really know you're going to stay in it. That's why I think we lose a lot of coaches, because they go, I won't spend the money to find out. I just won't do it. because then if you do it and then you don't like it, you've probably just wasted, a little bit of money. So to be fair though, like I said, the costs have come down. Like the C license now is just around about $1,000 for 4 days, a bit of online stuff. And on the C license, you come in on the course, face-to-face practicals, and there's expense for obviously the field and the hire of the field and the play, food, all that kind of stuff. You've got to pay for instructors. So it can be challenging.
Some people can't justify that. Yeah,
absolutely, and the time as well, right? So you spend, we do seed diplomas on, over 2 weekends, a Saturday, Sunday. So then 8-hour days, you're away from your family for 2 full weekends, and then if you're working Monday to Friday and stuff, and then you come and doing a coaching course on Saturday, Sunday, you don't have a day off for 3 weeks, and it gets, as you go into B diploma and that, it gets a little bit longer, and it's a little bit more challenging, and A is even harder, right? But I think. Yeah, probably. There's lots of challenges at the moment. There's definitely. I couldn't put my finger on one.
Yep. This next one, and I've turned it into a 2-parter. So, can you make a 5-a-side team of the greatest players you've ever coached? And then from those, who's the pick of the lot? Who's the best player
I've ever coached?
With Ackers, we did this. We didn't do a goalkeeper. I don't know if there's any goalkeepers that stand out over the years, but we went 5 outfield players.
Yeah, 5 outfield. I'll see how I go. I'll see. Definitely Niz, Josh Nisbet. I think obviously fortunate enough to spend a bit of time with Nizzy when he first come down to the coast, and I know some people sort of look at him and go, he's too small, he's this and that, but you're talking about players with spatial awareness, a very, very high football IQ, and things that he's probably had to learn because of his size, and something that I think he's managed really well, and probably the most humble. Or one of the most, because there's a lot of the ones that I've coached, but one of the most humble guys I've ever met in my life. I'd have to throw Nizzy in there for sure. Maxi Ballard, I'd say as well, probably because Maxi, as I said, I had a fair bit to do with him in his early doors when he first come up, and sort of being part of that start-off point for him to come to the Mariners. Jacob Farrell, absolutely. Faz, left-sided player, left-footed. Starting to evolve his game and get on a bit more. So in the 5-a-side, he could play a little bit deeper, then maybe get on a bit, score a few goals in the 5-a-side game and stuff like that. And he's a top defender. Got a little bit of nastiness about him as well.
Two to go.
Probably Bingers, Josh Bingham. Probably a big target man. That just as a point. And he'll kill me if I don't put him in. So I'll say Daniel McFarlane as a hybrid sort of player.
He can play wherever he wants.
He can play wherever he wants. He just gets a license to float. And he knows a lot of those boys as well and come through. So, Nizzy, Maxi, Faz, Bingers, and Macca. It's a pretty good team.
And who's your pick of the lot?
Probably Niz.
Yeah.
Probably Niz, if I'm being fair.
And he would have been underestimated his whole career, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And some of the setbacks that he had to go through, like part of his the smallness of his size, and that was based around he had some medical issues and that he was diagnosed when he was younger and stuff like that. And, it did stun his growth a little bit, but he never let it hold him back. He he did what he had to do. He kept fighting. There was times there when he couldn't play, kept getting told he was too small. And just to see, the last 2 years in the A-League when he was here before he went overseas and stuff, he was, in my opinion, and everyone can have their own opinion and that's fair, but for me, he was the best player in the A-League for 2 years. Again, you look at where he's come from in his journey and getting told you're too small, having some setbacks medically, and you go on and watch him go overseas and then make his Socceroos debut, but a genuine guy as well. So,
Next, we'll quickly, as someone who knows the local competition quite well, we'll go through our NPL and WPL predictions for this week.
Yep.
Starting with our Men's Premier League Saturday night, the second instalment of Ash Grant Cup here at Plume Park. So, Kalani and Terrigal. Who do you think is going to win that, and what do you think the score will be?
Tough games, tight first round, 1-0 Terrigal. Kalani actually built a lot of momentum in the second half of that game, and if you're a neutral there, I've got to be careful because I'm probably not. I'll get classed as biased, but from a neutral point of view, I think most pundits probably would have walked away thinking maybe Kalani deserved the point that night. But credit to Terrigal, they hung tough. They defended well, led by Jai McNamara. Wilco was solid enough in the game. Alex was good. A couple of young boys that I've had a little bit to do with over the time as well that were there, came on and did a really good job for him as well. So, look, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to put my Kalani hat on because we need to win as well. But I think maybe Kalani, maybe 2-1.
Yep. Well, Kalani usually get the job done here at Plume Park no matter what team. So
I'm sure I get a few messages from my Terrigal friends as well saying, "What are you doing, Pete? They got no chance." But anyway, I'll go Kalani 2-1, mate.
Next up, we have Gosford hosting Budgewoi at Gavin
Coming fresh off, Kalani got touched up last week by Budgie 4-0. Both teams obviously a bit under strength. Long weekend with the games being moved. But gee, Budgie were good. Gee, they were good, and they welcomed back a few players. I assume this week, without knowing, but I assume that they will. Gosford slowly building some momentum. Obviously, a good win against Arimba last time out.
Yep.
I just think Budgie might be just a bit too good for him this week. Maybe 3-1. I think Gosford might be able to pinch a goal, but yeah, I think Budgie might be just a bit too clinical for him this week. Yeah.
What about Arimba taking on Southern?
Yeah, Arimba's doing a bit tough at the moment, to be fair. I've spoken to a few people over there. They're working hard, they're training, they're trying to do all the right things. Maybe just a bit too young this year. Yep. Southern, they'll definitely make a charge late in the second round and stuff like that. They'll challenge Budgie all the way, I think. So, yeah, I'd say Southern maybe 4-0.
Okay. Next up, we have our match of the round. Two teams probably wanting to keep in touch with the semi-finals. We have Camel squaring off against Umina.
At Camel or Umina?
At Camel.
At Camel. Okay. I think Camel are quite good at home. Hard team to beat. I think if Zach Waddell and Logan Moore both play and fire, I think they might be able to get them 1-0 in a close one.
Final game, Wyoming going toe-to-toe with Berkeley Vale at Allen Davidson.
Again, Wyoming, big time on the improves. To be fair to Scotty, he's done a really good job over there. Brought some good young kids in. Praddy and Gumps have got a good experience side at Berkeley Vale. Hard to break down, hard to score against Berkeley Vale. Wyoming's got some firepower up front with young Papalato. He's doing really well. I was fortunate enough to have a bit to do with him at CCU when I was there. I'd have to tip Berkeley Vale. I'll stick with the favourites. Berkeley Vale 3-1.
Okay, now moving on to our WL competition. We'll go Kalani first again. They are hosting Umina.
Yeah, look, for the women's game, they're super strong, aren't they?
They're good. They're very good.
They've got some weapons. They've got some depth. Look, it's hard to see them getting beat. Umina have probably been a little bit inconsistent this year. I haven't spoken to Davey Brewer for a couple of weeks now, but I know they'll be working hard down there. I think they had a setback a couple of weeks ago when Kate unfortunately broke a leg and stuff like that, and so it's a big out for them. So without knowing Umina too much, I'm not sure where their goals will come from. So I'd have to say Kalani 3-0.
We got our match of the round Terrigal. They're hosting the entrance at Duffy's.
Probably the biggest improvers of the WPL season this year, right? Terrigal.
Yeah, with George taking over.
Yeah, George has come in, done a super job. The entrance, obviously, got to know Mal the last 6 months pretty well, the coach of the entrance and stuff like that. And again, I know they're working super hard, but I think Terrigal might have a little bit too much quality this weekend, maybe 2-0 Terrigal.
We have Campbell and Southern at Wadauba.
Probably take the home team just on home ground advantage, maybe Campbell 2-1.
Lucky last, East Gosford and Kincumber.
Super tough game. Two top sides in the WPL game. East Gosford 100% they're just going from strength to strength. They've picked up a few players in the off season, and you can start to see some of those players fitting into the squad well. Jess Dominello in there. She's always got goals in her. Kincumber, really good young side, doing really, really well as well in the WPL space. I think from a Kalani point of view, the girls would probably like them to have a draw.
Yep.
But I just think East Gosford are building some momentum. They had a good point away, Kalani last week, 1-1 and stuff like that. I just think they might just have a little bit too much class in the front third with Jess Dominello and stuff like that. So I'd back them 2-0.
There you have it. And as we wrap up here, final question. We've gone through your playing career, your coaching career. You've had some great moments as a player and obviously as a coach. When you look back, is there one moment that stands out compared to all? Maybe it might be a personal thing. Maybe it might be seeing these players go on and progress with their careers. Is there one that stands out for you?
Yeah, probably not one. It's a great question, and obviously it's a tough one to answer because there's been so many highs and lows, winning championships, making my first grade debut, all that kind of stuff. But I think probably the biggest thing for me now, working with players and just giving opportunities to young players, and whether you're a first grade coach, giving players the opportunity to play and make that, become part of a strong first grade sort of outfit, or I look now what we're doing with the association championships and stuff like that, and just seeing the smiles of the 13 and 14-year-old boys, 14, 15-year-old girls come in, just the thanks that they give you for giving them the opportunity to represent Central Coast out at Mudgee in a month, and just the joy that they get coming into training. And I'm looking forward to obviously the next couple of weeks working with them and stuff like that. So overall, I'd say just being able to give players opportunities that, whether they're 13 or they're 20 going into first grade and stuff like that, I think, and then hopefully watching them progress even further into, maybe the professional game one day and stuff like that, which obviously I've had that opportunity with a number of players as well. But just watching these players get opportunities, I think is amazing.
Can't beat it.
Absolutely not, mate.
Awesome. Well, appreciate for everything you've done over the years. You've influenced a lot of players, and sounds like you weren't too bad yourself. So thanks for coming on and sharing with us.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Cheers, Pete. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Coast Football Weekly. Please remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As always, we'll catch you next week for another episode.